Hello everyone, in this video we are just going to study in detail about conditional statements in C language. Let's get started. So our program always contains some conditions, and based on the conditions that is available in a program, the flow of execution of program also varies. That is, let's take an example. If a button is pressed, we just want to turn on an LED, and if the button is released, we just want to turn off the LED. This is an example for a conditional statement, and in this example you can examine that we will be keep on checking for the button state using a particular condition, and if that condition is matched or if that condition is satisfied, we will execute the part of code which will help us to turn on the LED. And on the other hand, simultaneously we will be checking for the button released condition also, and if that condition is satisfied, we will execute the part of code which will help us to turn off the LED. So this is a very good example for conditional statements. So this is the block diagram or flow diagram for conditional statements. If the button is pressed, if it is true or yes, LED will be turned on, and if it is false or no, LED will be turned off. And you can see on the screen the various types of conditional statements available in C language. First one is if, second one is if else, third one is if else if, and fourth one is conditional operator, which is nothing but ternary operator. We have already discussed about this ternary operator in detail in previous one of our video. And final one is switch case. Let us study in detail about each of these conditional statements one by one with an example code. And first and foremost conditional statements available in C language is this simplest form of if conditional statements, and this one is the syntax that you can see on the screen. That is, if within the braces we will be writing down the condition required, and within the flower braces we will be writing down the part of code which needs to be executed if this condition is satisfied. That is, this one is condition, and if this one is satisfied, we will execute this part of code. If it is not, we will skip this part of code. That's it. So this is the basic operation of if conditional statements, and let us try to demonstrate this if condition with an example in our Keel Microvision IDE. So now I am just opening the Keel Microvision IDE. And in this Keel Microvision IDE, for creating the project, click on project, new Microvision project, and go to the folder where you want to store your project. Let's take it to be, I'm just creating a folder here, and I'm just giving the name here to be Pro. You can give any name as per your wish, and here in this first select device for target tab, just type in the microcontroller name to be STM32 6446RE, and you can choose this microcontroller right over here, and then click on OK. And in the next manage runtime environment tab, just click on the plus near the CMSys and check this box right over here near the core. And additionally, you just need the startup code required for your microcontroller. For that, click on plus near the device and check this box near the startup. This will provide you the necessary startup code required for ST Microelectronics microcontroller STM32F446RE. In addition to that, just click on the plus near the compiler and plus near the IO under that compiler, and here you just want to check in std out and std in. So these two are necessary for using printf and scanf, and also for viewing the output from your code and getting the input from the user in debug viewer window in Keel Microvision IDE. That we will see later on. So for using that, you just want to check these two checkboxes right over here near the stdin and std out, and in this drop down select itm. Here also the same, and click on OK. And that's it. The project has been successfully created, and now we just want to create our own main.c file required for our project. Click on plus right over here, the target, and right click on the source group folder and click on add new item to group source group 1. Here in this tab, select the C file, that is .c file, which we are going to create, and give a name for your .c file. Obviously the main.c file is the one which we are going to create, so I am just providing the name to be main, and then click on add. Now this is the main.c file. I am just including the standard header as include of stdio.h in my program, and additionally we just want the main function, which is the foremost function which will be executed in every C program. So the usual thing, int of main I am just creating, and since the return type of the main here is int, I am just returning a 0 at the end of main function. So now we can start building our program right over here inside the main function. Now let us try to demonstrate the if condition with an example. I am just going to declare a variable right over here, a is equal to 7, and another variable b is equal to 3. And here I am just going to write down the if condition as per the syntax. So regarding the syntax of if condition, we very well know that if inside the circular braces we just want to write down the condition. So most often conditions will be written with the help of relational operators, that is if a greater than b, or greater than or equal to b, or less than b, or less than or equal to b, or equal to b, which is nothing but equal to b, or not equal to b, etc. So now I am just checking for a greater than b, and following that I am just going to write down the block for if condition. So if this condition is true, this block or code which is available inside this flower braces will be executed. Inside this I am just going to write down a is greater. Now I am just building this program. It is built with 0 errors and 0 warnings, and I am entering into the debug session of Keel Microvision IDE. And now what happens is, as per our logic, a is having the value 7, b is having the value 3. Hence the condition here is true. 7 greater than 3 is true. So this printf a is greater will be printed in the debug viewer window. You can see this condition is satisfied, and this string available inside the printf statement has been printed on the debug viewer window. So this is how if condition works based on the condition that you are providing inside the circular braces right over here. And the next conditional statements is if else conditional statements. So in the earlier example we just discussed about if condition which has only one condition. If it is true, we will execute the bunch of code available inside the if, and if it is false, we will skip that part of code. But in this if else, we will be executing the if condition block of code that is right over here if this condition is true. And if it is not true, or if this condition is failing, this else part in the code will be executed and this will be skipped. So this is the major difference between if and if else. We will be using if else in case if you want to execute else part code if the if condition is not satisfied. So if this is true, we will execute this line or this statements available inside this if flower braces, and if this is false, we will skip this if condition statements and we will execute this else part statements. So this is the working or functionality of if else conditional statements, and let us try to demonstrate this also with an example in Keel Microvision IDE. And now let us try to demonstrate the if else conditional statements. So in the same program that we have written, I am just going to add the else part. So you can see this is my program. Here what I am doing is I am just going to make the a value to be 2 voluntarily after this if else condition. So initially you can see in this program a value is 7, b value is 3. So this condition will be satisfied and a is greater will be printed. I am just adding the \n at the end for each of the strings available right over here. So this condition is true, so the string a is greater will be printed in the debug viewer window. And after this if else conditional statements available right over here, I am just voluntarily making the a value to be 2, which is less than b value 3. So what happens here is, again I am checking for the if condition of a greater than b, which is actually false because a value is 2 now, which is less than 3, which is b value. So this block of code will be skipped, and whatever the block of code that is available inside the else part will be executed. That is, a is smaller will be executed. So now I am just building this. So as per our understanding, for the first condition a is greater must be printed, and for the second condition a is smaller will be executed. So this is our expectations. Now I am running the code. You can see the program is functioning as per our expectations. So this is how if else conditional statements will be functioning in your C program. And the next conditional statement type is nothing but if else if. So as per the functionality of if else, we learnt that if the if condition is satisfied, the block that is available inside the if condition will be executed, and if the condition available inside the if condition is failing, we will execute the block of code inside the else part. And what if we have 2 or 3 conditions which needs to be checked before executing a certain part of code? That is, you can see on the screen we are having if condition right over here, which is one condition, and we are having second condition inside this else if, and we are having the else part as the third optional statements. So the program flow comes to the first line and it will be checking for this condition number 1 which is available inside the if, and if it is true, it will execute the block of code that is available inside this if condition, and it will skip rest all the statements because one condition is satisfied. And if this if condition is failing, it will check for this if else condition, and if this condition is true, it will execute this if else statements available right over here, and it will skip for the next execution. And also if you assume that if this if else is also failing along with this if condition, this else part right over here will be executed. So if you want to check for many conditions other than 2 conditions like what we did in if else, you can use this if else if conditional statements. So let us also discuss this with an example in our Keel Microvision IDE. So now let us demonstrate the if else if condition with an example. So this is the same program that we wrote for if else condition. I am just altering this and I am adding else if as the second part of this if else. If A is less than B, else if A equal to B, and at the last I'm just going to write down the else part, which is not equal. So what it does is it will check for this condition, and if it is greater, A is greater will be printed, and rest all these conditions will be skipped because this has become true. And if this condition is false, it will check for this condition. If A is greater than less than B, A is smaller will be printed, and all these instructions will be skipped because this has become true. And if both of these two instructions or conditions is false or it is failing, it will check for the third condition if A equal to B. If it is true, it will print the value A is equal. And if it is also failing, this else part will be executed. That is, if all the conditions right over here is failing, this else part will be executed. And the only drawback of this if else if is, it is not a drawback, but it is the flow of execution of this if else if. That is, if this else part needs to be executed, it will be checking for all the conditions right over here, and only after failing of all these conditions, this else part will be executed in your program. So in our case, I'm just going to make the A value equal to B. So I'm just making this as 3. So 3 equal to 3. So I will be getting this A is equal printed in my debug viewer window. Compilation is done. So now as per our expectation, this one is the string which needs to be printed in the debug viewer window. You can see A is equal has been printed. So this is how if else if conditional statements works in your C program execution. And similar to if else if, we can also use this switch conditional statements for switching for one or more options. That is, here we will be checking for one condition right over here, and if this condition value is 1, this case 1 statements will be executed, and if it is 2, this case 2 statements will be executed, and if it is 3, this will be executed, and if nothing among all the cases right over here is true, this default statements will be executed. So this is similar to if else if statements, where we want to check for whether any one of the among conditions are true. And the only major difference between switch and if else if is that in if else if, all the conditions will be checked if the else part at the last is executed. But in case of the switch, you can clearly see here itself the condition will be checked, and if the value is meeting with a particular value, let's say it to be 3, it will directly jump from this condition to this 3, and only this operation will be executed. But here you can clearly see this condition will be checked and this condition will be checked, and if both of these are false, then only this will be executed. So it will be consuming a particular number of cycles for checking all those conditions, but in this case it will check here and it will directly jump to case 1, case 2, case 3, or to default directly, saving some number of cycles for the processor. And now let us test the switch case statements with an example in our Keel Microvision IDE. So here what I will do is I am just going to use another variable c is equal to 0. I am just going to execute the same flow code with the help of switch conditions. I am just erasing all these lines available right over here. So now I am just going to use the c variable for fetching the conditional value if a greater than b. So if this a is greater than b, I will be getting 1 as the result in this c variable, and if this condition is false, I will be getting 0 as the result in this c variable. And here I am just going to write down the switch conditions. Switch of c. And if the case is 0, you can see if this condition is failing, c will be having the value 0. So if this c is having the value 0, I will print lesser. And after the block of code that you need to be executed, you just want to add the break in this switch case conditions. And in case of case 1, if this c variable is having the value 1, we will be printing the content greater. And if these two conditions are false, if I'm getting any other value other than 0 or 1, I just want to provide default conditions, that is nothing but anything you want right over here. So if the c variable is holding the value 0, lesser will be printed on the screen, and if it is having the value 1, greater will be the data on the screen or in the debug viewer window. And if these two values are, and if c variable is having the value other than 0 or 1, I will be printing default as a string on the debug viewer window. So this is what happens. So this default right over here in the switch statements is kind of a like else in if else if or in if else statements. So if nothing is true among these, this default will be executed. So now I am just building this and I am running this code. So as per our expectations from our program, this condition is true, so c value will be 1. So I will be getting this greater printed in the serial window. You can see as per our expectation, the greater has been printed in the debug viewer window. Now I am just changing the condition to be a less than b, which is false. So I will be getting this lesser printed in the debug viewer window. You can see as per our expectations, lesser is printed. Now I'm just going to voluntarily make this value of c to be 2, which is not among these two conditions, so that the default statement right over here will be printing the default as the string on the debug viewer window. I'm just compiling and I'm running the program. You can see the default has been printed in the debug serial window. So I hope you learned the basic functionality of switch conditional statements in C language. So in this video, I hope you learned if conditions, if else conditions, if else if conditions, and switch conditional statements, along with examples for each of the type of conditional statements available in C language in this video. And regarding the conditional operator, we have already explained about ternary operator in a previous one of our videos. I hope you remember that, and see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.